Neck-throughs, guitars, they're like a guy that won't have a beer with you.
I want to hear what's pushing the notes.
Freddie King and B.B. King, Albert King, and let's not forget Burger King.
I don't want to blow my knuckle out.
Stainless steel is the work of the devil.
These go to 11.
From the East Amplification Tone Labs in Baltimore, Maryland, it's the Amps and Axes Show with your hosts, Jeff the Godfather of Low Wattage Amps Bober and Mick Marcelino.
Well, good day to you, Mr. Bober.
Good day to you, Mr. Marcelino. How be you?
Oh, we are being great. I tell
Awesome.
you, man. And look, I got a little announcement, tiny little thing, real quick. We put some advertising on the show, and we went with some of this stuff, and we thought that you guys would like it, and it really hasn't hit. I don't know what it is, but me and Jeff have had a conversation, and I figured, well, I'm going to pull it down. I'm going to pull it down from the website and everything, but we're going to keep Amazon out there. And look, man, Amazon is one of those places everybody can go to it. And hey, we just had Christmas, right?
Right.
And if you click through that banner at ampsandaxescast.com,
Spend your Christmas money, man.
and you go there and you buy something. Look, they don't charge you extra.
Right.
You get it for whatever. You got Prime. It doesn't matter. You just click through our banner, though, and it throws a little love over here, and it keeps these hard drives spinning. And we can keep bringing this to you because in the new year, some things are going to change, I think. And, we don't want to get to where it gets weird for you, but we got to keep the lights on. And that's just the bottom line. So and it all requires your guys' help. And we can't do that without you.
Exactly. Or your friends, your relatives, your acquaintances, even people you don't know. Just throw the name at them. let them find us.
That's right. And when you do let them find us, did I say that right?
I think that came out right.
Yeah, okay. Never know, Jeff. You want to make sure. Well, we would like you to make sure that you tell them that you heard it here first.
That's right, because we always try to bring you something for the first time, and this is a first for us. The guest is, and it's a guest from the U.S. that has played with a band for quite a while that is not from the U.S. So we're going to take a quick pause, and we're going to be right back with our guest of the week, bassist and vocalist for the Little River Band, Mr. Wayne Nelson. Okay, and we are back with our guest of the week, as promised, from the Little River Band, Mr. Wayne Nelson. Wayne, how are you?
I'm doing great. I didn't know I was the guest of the week. I feel honored.
Well, it's got to be somebody. Might as well be you.
That's right, man.
I guess so. I'm ready for the challenge.
Very nice, very nice. Well, I don't know, Mick. You have anything to start with?
It was interesting. I got contacted by, I guess, your PR person, Wayne, and they were like, "Hey, would you be interested in having Wayne on the show?" And I was like, "How do I say yes?"
Sure.
I was like, "Yeah, we definitely want to have Wayne on the show because we get it's one of those things. Is like getting guys that are like in these upstarting bands." It isn't that difficult, because they're trying to get their name out there. But some of the bands that have been established, been around, and everybody knows their name, it's actually kind of hard to get a hold of those guys sometimes. So to have somebody reach out to us, I was like, well, this is making it a little bit easier for me.
Well, she's great at doing that, and most times we're a moving target. But we just got done with a big long run for the year, and like I say, I'm in the car with my wife, and we're headed back to our home in Florida with an SUV full of stuff that we cleared off the bus. So this is a good time to chat.
Awesome.
Very nice, very nice. So home is East Coast of Florida, right?
East Coast, yeah, Delray Beach.
Delray Beach, yeah, okay.
I bet you wake up and hate that every day.
I'm not going to rub it in, but no, I don't. I love it there.
Very nice. Well, we know that's where you are now, and we'll figure out how you got there, because we're going to take a ride in the Wayback Machine, like I do with all of our guests, and find out where Mr. Wayne Nelson was born and raised, and how you got into this wonderful, wacky music business. So give us some history.
Okay. Born in Kansas City, and pretty quickly moved to Illinois, where I grew up, literally cornfields, and a 3-room school, and walking back and forth in the snow, and so on and so forth. That was really my childhood. My parents were involved with community theater and church. My dad was a drum major in college, so there was always, military marches on the record player. My mom was into Broadway and classical, so that was there. So I was immersed in music most of the time growing up. And it wasn't until we moved away and got to the Chicago area, where some high school friends were putting together a band. I said, I can sing a little bit. I'd sure love to, come and do it, because it would be fun. And within a few months, they realized that I was teaching the bass player, or telling the bass player when the notes were wrong that he was playing. So the drummer pulled me aside and said, look, if you can sing lead and play bass at the same time, we can get rid of 2 guys and make more money. So that was that was the beginning of being a lead singer and playing bass at the same time, which is it's a split brain kind of schizophrenic thing, where you're holding it down in one routine and trying to improvise and riff with the other half of your head. So anyway, kept working my way through stuff in Chicago with gigs and so on and so forth. And a friend who had left to go to LA called me and said, you got to get out here. I got a gig for you if you want it. So I went to try my fortunes in Los Angeles, and I met up with Jim Messina. Was in Jim's band for a couple of years. We opened for Little River Band, which was the only extensive touring that we did in those 2 years. And I was, again, in the right place at the right time, because their 8th bass player had left, and they were looking for someone who could play and sing. So that got me from doing 6 sets a night in Chicago to touring with Little River Band.
Well, the ninth one's the charm, So it's,
exactly.
Remember that one.
How did you wind up in Chicago? Was that again did your parents move for what they were doing, or did you decide to go?
No. My folks moved in my sophomore year in high school, and got me up to that area. And luckily, there were some players in the school. It was a much bigger school than where I was going in Central Illinois. And these guys are putting together a garage band. So we lived in the suburbs of Chicago, but of course, as your band gets better, you start moving in towards the city, and ended up doing a lot of work in the city. We went to college nearby so that we could stay together, and kind of grew through the college years. And then I got into a band, a horn band that was doing original music, and every step was kind of the right step. I was eager to move on from the 4-piece rock and roll band to getting into a horn band, and then horns and a lot of vocals, and it just kept going in the right direction. And I was very lucky.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Now, what was the horn band something that was still in Chicago, or was that when you moved out to the left coast?
No. The horn band was in Chicago, and we were doing a lot of Chicago at the time. Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Spiral Staircase, and Chase, and anything that came along that had horns in it, we were trying to listen to what they do. And that was the band that we started writing our own music. And it was, we dipped our toe into some jazz and funk and stuff like that. And it was a huge learning experience for, you know, a self-taught bass player, you know, playing with a 4-piece cover band. It was really like a 3 or 4 year clinic on learning the ins and outs of real music and charts and you know, playing with horns, and you got to be precise. You can't get in their way, and it was good stuff. They were great musicians, and I, you know, learned a lot from all of them.
That's pretty awesome, man. Nothing like a good horn band, you know?
Oh, no. And one thing, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the power of the horns was an interesting backdrop to getting into Little River Band, because Little River Band was a band that I, you know, as soon as I heard their vocals, I admired them, but I didn't realize that when to jump into that band live was the first time we'd ever treated vocals like a horn section. There was a lead vocalist, but when the group was singing, everybody was singing lead, only they were singing their part, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
So very, very horn-like out front. So it was a good background to have been in that horn band and hear the power of that.
That's really interesting to think of a multi-vocal band in the same way as you think of horns. That's pretty cool. I've never really heard anybody say that before. That's pretty cool.
And to go back just a second, I'm sorry, Wayne, but
sure.
You know, I guess, you know, there may be some guys out there that think that it's not a big deal to play bass and sing, but you got to remember the bass is not the melody. So playing guitar and singing, you're kind of following yourself, you know, it's just there, you're in that same thing, but the bass is trying to follow the kick drum and, you know, keep that thing going. So like you said, it's like this schizophrenic thing, because you're trying to hold down this rhythm and then sing the melody on top of that. So you're
right.
like, it's like you're playing piano with your head. You know, you're like you got the left hand and the right hand doing the whole bottom part, but then you got the top part of your head. You know, it's got to be. I can't, because see, everybody goes, well, what about Geddy Lee? And it's like, well, Geddy Lee doesn't. And I'm not dismissing Geddy Lee. Don't get me wrong, but that's very technical.
No, please don't.
Yeah, it's very technical. It's very precise, and it's not really. It's not rock and roll. It's progressive.
It's more prog, yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't stay in that same realm as it would be with a guy that's holding the bottom end and trying to, you know, playing with the drummer, not, you know, in that other sense. And I know somebody's going to send me some hate mail on that, but it's not, I'm not dismissing Geddy Lee in any way. It's just when you have that thing and then you're trying to sing this lead and the way that they sing, it's like, God almighty.
Well, I understand what you're saying. Geddy plays more like he's it's another lead or solo instrument
it's like up
type
front.
of thing.
Yeah,
right, it's
not,
up front.
It's not tucked away or even trying to just hold that. It's kind of in your face. And when you're doing that other piece, I imagine it's got to be a little bit brutal at first. I don't know. I never thought of that. But then when he said it, I was like, oh, man, yeah, that would be a little bit much.
I don't play bass. I don't know.
I think that, and again, you can't dismiss the technical, impressive style of Rush and what Geddy does over those bass lines. But more in the direction that I was in was more like a Peter Cetera or McCartney. Those kind of lines that, like you say, they were melodic, and they, you put the vocals over the top of them. Those were the two guys I would have to say that I was most enamored with until Jaco Pastorius came along, but he never sang, of course, over what he did. He was just, a phenom. But the real test was R&B, and there are some grooves being laid down in R&B songs that the vocal just sits over the top, and the bass player sitting in the back grooving along, and he doesn't have to worry about singing the melody over the top of it. That's when you're really patting your head and rubbing your stomach at the same time, and walking and chewing gum. So it's and every one of them was a role model to try and be able to do that. Because if you're the lead singer and somebody comes up and says, "Hey, I want to do this funk tune," well, you got to go home and woodshed how your hand is going to keep playing, that, lay down that one rhythm and then sing over the top of it. And like I say, it's a bit schizophrenic, and you don't get a chance to veer very much from your program once you get up there and you're in front of a bunch of people. It's not a time to experiment, that's for sure. But all different styles, and there have been a few famous bass players that sang lead in bands. I mean, another great example is a band we work with all the time, Ambrosia. Joe Puerta, great bass player, singing pretty smooth, melodic, big vocals over the top of those grooves. Hats off to him. It's not an easy thing.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah. Well, you seem to have mastered it well.
Yeah.
So, and the whole, like you said, that whole funk thing was, a good basis.
Oh my God. The stuff that's going on underneath some of that.
Yeah. To actually be able to perfect and then take that on to the next step. That's, you at that point, I'm sure had become a valuable player.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Well, I liken it to one of, either the lead vocal or the bass has to go on autopilot so that you can be fluid in the other one. And 9 out of 10 times it's your hands that, they're programmed to go where they're supposed to go, and then you're free to sing over the top of it. But it really is. I got one recording job because they were watching a video and they said, "How did you even know who I am?" They said, "We saw the HBO special, and I wanted the guy that could play Happy Anniversary, sing lead, and chew gum at the same time." So I got the case.
I'm your guy.
Well, there you go.
That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome.
Wow, man.
So let's move it on to the Jimmy Messina thing. What was it that brought you out to the left coast, or that just happened after you got there? You must have had a reason to go to California.
Well, that was another of the right place, right time. The gig that I went to for originally in California was it was meant to be 7 weeks long. It was with a R&B kind of jazz singer named Eloise Laws, who is the sister of Hubert Laws and Ronnie Laws, other great musicians out of that same family. And we were going to be on the road for 7 weeks. And we rehearsed, we did 2 shows, and I woke up on a Sunday morning to a message from the tour manager that everybody had left and gone back to LA, and thanks very much. And, you're on your own. We were in New Orleans and, got left at the hotel. So,
wow.
One of those deals, you either go back home or you continue on with what you decided to do. So I went back to LA and did odd jobs of all sorts just to eat. And a friend of a friend called and said that they saw a card at the Union Hall, and Jim Messina was looking for a bass player. I was a fan of Loggins and Messina, so I answered the call, and his reaction was, "How did you get this number?" I said, "Well, you left it at the Musicians Union." He said, "No, I didn't. And I have no idea why that number's there, but you called, so if you want to come up and audition." So, I mean, really, the fates were at hand there, because Messina was quite upset that his phone number was
on the wall,
on a bulletin board at the Union. Wasn't his nature to go to the Union and look for players. There was a different kind of a different set of people that were, than what he was looking for. So, right place, right time, vicariously by a friend who went in and saw that number. So I drove up and I met Jimmy, and we hit it off immediately, just on a personal level. And then, we one rehearsal later, he said, "You're in the band," and he had auditioned a whole lot of players, and I think it was much more personal. He wanted people in the band that he felt a friendship with, as opposed to a paid sideman kind of thing. So we rehearsed. We did very little traveling. We mainly spent our time rehearsing his new material to get ready to do his first solo album after Loggins and Messina. And it was a really interesting blend of kind of a Tex-Mex Latin pop thing in the late 70s. I don't remember when the Miami Sound Machine broke onto the scene, but Jimmy was doing it kind of from the roots of his Texas heritage. And he's got that distinct finger-picking Texas funk thing going on. And we put those rhythms together with his guitar playing and made his first record called Oasis. And again, like I say, the only touring we did of any note was we went and opened for Little River Band for 2 weeks.
And you got the gig
so
from
one
there.
thing led to another, and I got the gig from there. But Jimmy was another huge learning experience. There's been 2 or 3 people I've worked with who they're players and performers, but they're record producers at the same time, and their ears are always listening to things on an incredibly analytical way. If the drummer changed the pattern on his hi-hat, Jimmy would tell him about it later on at the end of the show. And we're playing and singing and having fun and grooving and whatever, and nobody's really being analytical in that way. And he was always hearing every note. It was pretty amazing.
Wow.
The way his brain it was like a human computer, that he was analyzing things all the time. So it kept us on our toes to make sure that we played the music the way he wanted it. He was definitely in control. But he taught me a huge lesson. Every band is going to have a bad night. Good bands are going to always have great nights, but he said even the best bands they're going to have a night where they don't communicate. And he said, we need to be as well rehearsed as we can so that when that night happens and we're not firing on all 8 cylinders, that we've got a bottom line that we never go below. That is putting the music across, even though we might not think we're doing our best, the audience won't know that. And that's been a huge lesson, because it is so true. No live band is on 10 every single night.
No.
It just can't happen, and you never know what the reason is. It could be a distraction in the crowd that takes one person sideways. But if you got a band that communicates really well with each other, if that gets broken somehow, things can go sideways. So I owe a huge, musical lesson to Jim Messina that's not written down anywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He really turned me on to that mental thing. And when it happens, I am proud to say Little River Band has a bottom line that we never go below. Even when we walk off going, whoops, I missed that one in that song, but we cover each other's butt pretty well.
I like that. Some guys would see that as him being a little stiff, knowing everything that's going on. But, you got to look at it on the other side. Yeah, you may have played this song 8,000 times. And, of course, maybe you want to take a railroad spike and shove it through your ear. But the guy that paid $37 that has been working all week that's coming to see you, well, he hasn't heard it. And it's like, that's your job, is to deliver this thing the way that they would like to hear it, and
right.
They would not want you to, I know I wouldn't want to pay $37 to have somebody half-ass it. I'd want them to try their best, and granted, like you said, not every night's great, but if you have that bottom line, then every night's great to the guy paying $37. And that's
well,
what,
you're
that's what's
absolutely
key.
right. And I'm glad you went there, because that's the additional layer to it. There is an obligation to make sure that the people that are paying to see the show, and in turn are paying for your living and your career, they deserve the very best that you can give them. And the very best that a band can give is that the band is good every night. Individually, you might not think you were there. There are nights, I swear to God, in terms of amps and axes, I play a 5-string and have now for 25 years, but I grew up on a 4-string, and I play a 4-string for a couple of songs in the show. And there are nights that I look down and I go, I don't know which end of this guitar is up.
Where the hell am I?
Where the hell am I? What key? I've been playing the song for 4,000 times. What key is this song in? Seriously, it happens.
Oh, yeah.
And and the guy that paid, and 37 is being nice. Sometimes it's 75 or 100.
I date myself.
They're there
right?
for their special night, the big date night. So do I. But
Totally.
You got to do it. You got to put it out there and make sure that the band is as good as it can possibly be to to earn that respect. And you nailed it. That it's not just for the guy standing up there. It's for the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you ever, and speaking of which, because you talk about going from the 4 to the 5, and sometimes you're like, where am I? Have you had those horrible nights when you go, I don't know how the song starts lyrically? Have you had that one?
There's no question.
Or musically?
No question. I mean,
isn't that weird?
Oh, it's very weird.
You're like,
you go,
how the hell do I forget this?
Right.
And look, let's be honest. A guitar player, can kind of, you can scratch on a guitar and think you got 6 strings. You can kind of find your way around, and it doesn't sound so bad. The bass player plays the wrong first note, the whole crowd knows that whoops, you're on the wrong note, buddy. No, it's happened to me. As a matter of fact, when I first switched to the 5-string, the very first chord of after the acapella for Lonesome Loser, losing it keeps on trying, bang, downbeat for the band, the whole band, the big rock and roll downbeat, and I'm 4 notes away from where I'm supposed to be.
Oh,
it's not really a pretty sight. Yeah,
that isn't even close.
No,
but,
I'm on the wrong string on the wrong fret.
But right after that comes the epic slide.
Yes. Necessity being the mother of invention. Yeah, you slide into it and you just keep going.
Yeah.
With a big smile on your face.
First, you got to play it twice, so that way you make it right.
That's only in jazz. There
you go.
Wow.
Jazz.
Right.
So I guess we got to talk a little gear, because he got on the 5-string there, Jeff.
Well, yeah, we should definitely get there. I just wanted to I wanted to touch base a little bit on Little River again, because we just barely got through Jimmy Messina, who, man, every time somebody mentions his name, the Angry Eye starts playing in my head. It's one of my favorite Jim Messina songs and solos. It's perfect. It's just perfect.
Mine too. And as the bass player, I just got to say, what a great bass line to that song too. We had so much fun playing that live. It is a great arrangement of a great song.
Mm-hmm. So you went from there into Little River Band, and what did you say, 9th bass player? So 9th is the charm. That was 1980, I think, if my records are right.
Yeah, I met him in '79, and we kind of arranged to. They were at the end of quite a long tour, and so they took a few months off to mix and release that live CD that they were working on, and we went back at it in April of 1980.
Nice.
Wayne has this sensor that he carries around that if it spots any bass players, it wipes them out. Because he doesn't want to be he doesn't want number 10 coming in.
The X number 9.
How the hell did they get 8 bass players and have that much issue? That is crazy. That's a lot of changes for one position.
It really was. The very first one, I don't think made it past the first month. Then came the first player that recorded with the band. That was Roger Mclaughlin. I'm trying to remember the name of never mind. It doesn't matter. He lasted about a year, and then they got George Mcardle, who was a great left-handed player who was also very much into Jocko and was kind of an Australian. George was very unique in Australia for, having a fretless and a fretted and playing those kind of parts, underneath a big vocal band like LRB. Mm-hmm. But George, after a couple of years, was not happy with the touring schedule overseas, mm-hmm. and literally gave up all of his rights and royalties, and I hugely respect him for it. He left the band and he went to a Bible retreat for 2 years to become a minister, and still is a minister in Australia. He's a great human being. I really like the guy.
Man, when he gave up music, he gave it up.
But he gave it up. He gave it up for the Bible. So that spun him into using 3 bass players for the next record that they did. And then when they went back on the road, they chose yet another player who was a session player to go and do the tour. Mm-hmm. that was playing when I met him, and they knew he wasn't a permanent fixture, and he didn't sing.
Okay.
So the door was open, and Jimmy's band happened to be in front of him. They came out every show to watch Messina because he was a legend to them as well.
Yeah. And
while they were doing it, turned out they spotted a bass player that could sing, so. They made the offer to me, and I have to say, the Messina band was a band unto itself, and Jimmy was going to produce us when we were done with his tour. That all fell apart because his record didn't do well, and his label let him go, and blah, 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 typical music story. But he let us all go about a month after. But the night that Little River Band asked me to come down and play with them, I actually turned them down.
Mm.
I said, I'm too wrapped up in this, and this is, our original music, and it was really a great band.
Lost him.
Wow, that was
maybe
weird.
Maybe we'll get him back.
Well, just hang tight.
Yeah,
I'm really scared. I do have the number though copied, so I can always put it up there. Come on.
I had actually seen it pop up on the Skype screen here. The connection was really good to that point.
Yeah, it was like excellent. Didn't even do a weird thing. Oh, he's gone. Oh, he's going away. Hold on. Let it disappear, and then I can try. Let's see if I can, if I go add, show dial pad. I don't know if I can make this work. Let's see here. Command V. Well, that's just weird. Oh, damn it. Why does it do this? I don't even understand this. It's like I want to add the guy, but I can't. Okay, hold on. Let's go here. Let's add people. Oh, there he is. Okay, let's say add. Ooh, we're calling him back. How about this shit?
That's because he was already in.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't hear it ringing. Oh, come on, play nice. There he is.
Hello.
There we go. It was perfect until that point.
Well, we had everything up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had everything up to where you lived in Kansas. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, got me. That's funny.
All right. So where
were we? Yeah, we were.
Oh, when he got released.
I can't play with you guys. I'm tied up with Jimmy. It's our own material.
Yes.
So and then the Messina band, ceased to be.
It did. It fragmented pretty quickly because everybody needed to eat, and I had 2 young kids and whatever. So it everybody went back to work wherever they could. And like I say, the LRB said they would call back when they were ready, and I was sure that wasn't going to happen. But in March of 1980, they did call and said, be here for rehearsal in April, and here's where the tour's going, et cetera, et cetera. So it all fell into place.
That is so cool.
Now, I mean, they are an Australian band. How? Well, I guess it was because of the tour. Were you guys touring in Australia, or were they in the States here touring?
Well, it's an odd thing. LRB had a couple of moments of what's the word? Not just success and attention, but actually, got large in Australia. But over the course of most of the band's career, the LRB wasn't touring anywhere near on the level that we did in the rest of the world. So we did warm-up shows at pubs down there, bars to some extent that had medium to large size club rooms.
Mm-hmm.
But again, in the, we 400 people, maybe 600 or 700 people. And then when we left, we went straight to Germany, and the first gig was at Olympic Stadium in front of 125,000 at a festival. So the difference was quite amazing. When I saw them, every night was at an arena with anywhere from 15 to 20,000 people, and to go to Australia, to their home country, and see that it was on a completely different scale was an eye opener. And we did tour Australia, but it was on that level for about a week and a half or 2 weeks, and then we flew overseas and went back in front of huge audiences for the next 2 to 3 years.
Wow. That's so strange. It's like, they're just a local band. Wow.
And that almost, and there's, I don't want to get into a whole lot of Australianisms, but there was something down there called the tall poppy syndrome, which if an Australian sought to go be famous or get recognition worldwide, they kind of chopped him off at the knees. Men at Work were number one for 16 weeks in a row in multiple countries around the globe, and went for this long, long tour. And their first show back to Australia, they got booed.
Wow.
And I can't explain it, because they were a really cool band. They had an edge to them that worked, but Australia was a tough nut to crack, and a lot of the music at that point was heavier. Midnight Oil and AC/DC and the Angels and Hunters and Collectors, on and on. Good bands, but just with a harder edge to them. So there was a point where Little River Band was soft for Australia. There was only ever one number one song there, which was Help Is On Its Way, and it was released while they were gone, and when they came back, it was climbing the charts. So there was this moment where famous concert on the steps of the Opera House in Sydney with, 10,000 people there, and a couple other big shows with other acts. But pretty quickly, it became evident that things were tapering off again, and Australia was moving on, because Little River Band was outside the country. They were famous in America. They were famous in Germany, and so on and so forth. So the tall poppy syndrome kind of kicked in, and and people, Little River Band, okay. And we went back to playing those clubs whenever we went back to the country, but it was never ever on the scale of the success in the U.S. or Canada or Europe.
Wow, that is so...
in the time. It's weird. In the time that I was in the band, everybody goes, "Well, how come you don't go back to Australia?" And I said, "Well, it's just not financially viable to go there and do it. It hasn't been for years. The last time I played a show of any size in Australia was in the 90s, maybe even a little before that. It's all been overseas for a long, long time."
That sounds like when we interviewed what was his name, Pritchard, Di Pritchard from Rose Tattoo. Remember, he played with Billy Thorpe, and we were completely like in the dark about his career, and this guy was like Elvis in Australia. And he had that one song here, "Children of the Sun," but and that was pretty successful for him. But it was like he disappeared. No, he was in Australia. He was the biggest thing going. And we were like, "Are you serious?" And it never left.
Let me tell you how quick that can turn around too. Billy Thorpe did that one film clip where he was. I don't remember. I can't remember the name of the song. Forgive me, but I know the clip well. It was a great song too, and it was a good, strong rock and roll song. But he was walking through a house or through sets, and it looked like he got to a bedroom, and he got slammed for it being somehow too suggestive or
Really?
something, or it didn't look rock and roll enough for Billy Thorpe, and he was done. I mean, he fell off a cliff because of that one thing. I mean, like
that's
you say,
crazy.
he was huge.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
And like I say, it's a tough nut to crack. You gotta really watch your backside if you're, keeping your career alive and well in Australia. It's an interesting phenomenon. And again, I went there 42 times before, it became obvious that there wasn't really a market there for us to go back to. And I've made great friends. I love the country, the culture, the food, the uniqueness of that island continent, and all that it has to offer. But music business is you got to toe the line. It's really very interesting phenomenon.
Well, else you get kicked by a kangaroo. But let's talk about some gear.
Let's talk about gear.
Yeah, let's talk about gear. I always try to ask, like, what was the first, do you remember what the first guitar or bass that you got that you learned on, and, the story behind that? Did you actually start on bass, or did you start on guitar and then go to bass?
No, I went straight to bass. I mean, I borrowed a friend's guitar, the first acoustic guitar that gave me blisters, and I bled on the strings like any kid will do.
Right.
Was only to learn how to play a chord, one chord, that kind of thing, just because I was listening to Rubber Soul and I loved it so much. I wanted to learn how to play every song on Rubber Soul, and I would. My parents were not really pleased with my leaning towards that kind of music, so I would get in bed and pull the covers over my head and play acoustic guitar at night, trying to not to make noise and wake them up. But it became very obvious that I was going to be the bass player, and I don't even. This is funny. I don't even know if you remember the brand, but the brand of bass that he had bought that I inherited was a Tiesco, Tiesco.
Absolutely remember. Sure.
You do?
Oh yeah.
Great. Well, you just dated yourself again. Anyway, I was on a yellow Tiesco guitar, and the true story, there was a bar fight broke out in front of us at a show, and I was playing the Tiesco, and I literally had to swing it for self-defense to keep guys from jumping up and taking us out. And I swung it at a guy to keep him away, and did a big roundhouse and ran into a mic stand, and it split the neck. And that was the end of that bass. So that was when I bought a Fender Precision in 1968, and was in heaven. Just the smell of a brand new Fender was what's the word? Not wasn't addictive. It was alcoholic, I guess you'd say. It was intoxicating.
Intoxicating.
I
like it.
Loved it.
I was searching for the same word.
Wow,
so I played that Fender Precision for a long time. Then started to experiment around with. Do you remember the Gibson Grabber, the one where the
two horns?
The pickup would move.
Oh,
yes.
You could slide the pickup forward or backwards to create either, the simulated jazz bass where you had the rear pickup or the back pickup. It was really not a great concept. It didn't work well, and it didn't sound very good. But
come on, Gibson coming up with crazy concepts.
Yeah, go figure. So they had another one. I can't remember what was the other one. There was a Grabber and there was a Groover or something else. But it short-lived experiment with Gibson, and got back to the Fenders. Started playing Fender jazz for a couple of years. And when I got into LRB, I had two 65 Fender jazz basses. One was a fretless and one was a fretted, because I was such a Jocko freak. And they didn't travel well. The necks every time they take them out of the case, the neck would be skewed at about a 5 or 10 degree angle, because it wasn't riding well in the bus or the truck. And this at that point, we were just at the point of getting an endorsement from Yamaha, and Yamaha basses were the new big thing in recording circles around in the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And so I switched to start playing Yamaha basses with LRB for probably up until the mid 90s. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I take it back all the way through 2000.
Okay.
When my beautiful wife, unknown to me, by the way, as every player will be, you're really picky about which model and which one feels the best, and so on. And Fender had been trying to win us back over for years and years and years, because both guitar players were playing Strats and Tellys, and we knew the rep, and he kept coming to shows and bringing out these different models of basses, and I kept going, there's a dead spot right here, or it just doesn't feel good. I don't like it. I'm a Yamaha guy. And my wife, unknown to me, for Christmas, our first Christmas together, got our guitar tech to call the rep, the Fender rep, and explain again, I would love to get him a bass, but he's very picky and has never had much success with your basses since the early, late 60s and early 70s. And he said, I'm going to send you a model that is kind of understated and not real well known from our line, but picky bass players love this model. And it was the Fender Jazz 5-string, the Victor Bailey model, with active bass, treble, and mid controls.
Nice.
And again, that intoxicating smell. I opened up this brand new Fender 5-string and sat with it for almost 2 hours playing it before I ever plugged it in, because it was just a great piece of wood. Everything about it resonated with me, including the low B string, because that was still a hard thing to master at the time. And then I plugged it in, and it was like, oh my God. And she bought this thing for me, sight unseen, not knowing a thing about basses, and took the rep's word for it. And It was an absolute gem. And I've never turned back. I've been playing it ever since.
So was that your first 5-string?
No, Yamaha actually made me a 5-string. They took their, at the time they were called BB 2000s, was their 4-string. What was his name?
Billy Sheehan?
Great.
Was that what I was going to say? Was that Billy Sheehan was playing?
Billy was the Yamaha guy. I don't know if he was involved with the BB. The other guy was Nathan East was playing Yamaha at the time.
Yeah.
And shoot, help me out here. Brazilian bass player whose his son played drums with McCartney.
Same bass player.
Oh.
We're going
My
deep.
brain is a piece of Swiss cheese now. I can't make.
I don't know if I
just can't make these.
I don't know.
Brazilian when I
bass
stop
player.
trying, it'll come back to me.
There you go.
Yeah. Anyway, he was playing Yamaha as well, and he used to play with Lee Rittenauer, all those great jazz players, and he was a flamenco guitar player, so he had this unique style of finger picking the bass as well as being able to slap. Abe Laboriel.
There you go.
Huh.
And Abe Laboriel Jr. is the drummer that played with McCartney for years. They've put out a record together, and they're monster musicians. Anyway, those were the Yamaha guys. And at the time, the BB was a 4-string, and I coerced Japan to build me a 5-string. And they built me a 5-string on the same body and everything as the 4-string. So they slapped it together they added another pole to the pickups, and it didn't work well, and the low string didn't work well, and so on and so forth. So, but eventually they did it. They put a model into production, and I ended up with a TRB5. That was my first 5-string that I could really claim as being a production model 5-string. Was a TRB5. I think it came out in 81, maybe 82.
Oh, okay.
And I took my first one, turned it into a fretless, and got another one at 95. And I still have them. They still play great and sound great for what they do. But the Fender it's a Fender. It's that warm, Fender bass from the mid 50s that you're used to that sound, and our sound man loves it. And I've taken the Yamaha out for a couple of gigs when we had to do a fly date and leave the Fender in the bus. But they all come back to me and go, look, that's a really nice bass, but please leave it at home. and don't make us adjust the sound of the band to fit that guitar. So
wow.
I love them, but they stay at home now.
Look
Wow.
at that.
Do you still have the first one?
I don't have the first one anymore. I made the huge mistake of selling all 3 when I needed to buy the new ones, and I had 2 natural grain BB 2000s that were the 4-strings, and then they made me the other one that I just kind of unloaded all of them. It's one of those things where I've never been a collector. I haven't collected, the backstage passes and guitars and so on and so forth. We've been moving around from Australia to America, then all around the country now, and just not a person to hold on to stuff that I knew I wasn't going to use anymore. So I sold it, and the guy that bought it stays in touch with me, and he said, thank you very much for selling me this collector's item. I think I've probably made my money 3 times over now by hanging on to it. So, but
right.
More power to him. It's one of those unique things. But anyway, I made that call, and they're gone.
Yeah. No, I was actually Wayne. I was actually referring to the first Fender bass that you got.
Oh God, no! I made that mistake a long time ago. I sold that one to buy the Gibson Grabber, and that was a bad move all the way around.
Sounds like.
Well, you could take all the.
Oh yeah.
I wish I still had my '65 Fender Precision.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, you could take all the, you could take all your guitars if you really want to make a mistake and buy the Firebird X that Gibson never could sell.
Right.
I know where one is, brand new, hanging on the wall.
Well, and that's where it's going to stay for right now. No, they never did fix that one, did they?
No, that thing, oh my God. You talk about, if anybody ever wonders why Gibson may close the doors, it could be because of that guitar. They put millions into that thing, and it failed miserably.
Yep. Wow.
Oh, man. Anyway.
Another big fail, yep.
Oh, yeah. That's what
so
happens when the money talks.
Let's go to amplification for a while. What's
okay?
How's that changed or stayed the same over time for you?
Well, for me, it's changed radically, and I have to say, I'm the amps part of amps and axes is not my strong suit anymore. Again, with that Yamaha deal, part of my sound has always been to have 12s, but have a lot of them, so that you got the coupling to get the bottom end, but you always had the clarity of the 12s at the top end. There was a day when I used an acoustic 360. If you remember those, it was the folded 18-inch horn, and
yeah, man.
Again,
Jocko fan.
Pastorius.
Yeah, there you go.
And me, yeah, you could make that thing do just about anything, but whatever you wanted to do, it had to be really loud.
Yeah.
And so
is that what you used back in your funk days?
The horn band and the funk, yeah. So I was not
nice.
The horn players were not a fan of my acoustic 360. I'll tell you a great story about that amp. The first one I bought, I was driving a 65 Chevy convertible, and the only way for me to get that amp to and from anywhere was to lower the top, put down the passenger seat, and lay it in, then put the top back up. So the music store loaned it to me because I didn't have enough money to pay for the whole thing. I wanted to try it, and then I was going to come back. So I left them a deposit, put it in my convertible, went and did the show, came home, and parked the car. When I woke up in the morning, now I'm 19 or 20 years old, I woke up in the morning, and it was pouring rain. And it's a convertible, so, it's going to leak a little bit, and I'm freaked out that the car's going to leak. And I run downstairs, bare feet, and I run outside into the parking lot of the apartment building, and the top is down on my car. Somebody had pulled the top down and stolen the amp, and it wasn't even mine.
Holy
hell.
hell.
Oh my God.
Holy hell.
I had used it one night and came back, and somebody had followed me home and stolen the amp. Thank you very much, Chicago suburbs. So
wow. And they left your top down.
And they left the top down so that I could soak the car as well. So
God.
I crawled back into the music store, and I told the guy what happened. He said, well, you are in luck. Our insurance policy will cover that.
Whoa.
Here's another amp, but I have to get payment today. So I went home and I borrowed the money and went back down there and paid for it. And I mean, it was all of $350, but at that point, that's when $350 was worth $300. So it was, but huge. I mean, you talk about a smack in the face. But anyway, that was my first real buy. Before that, I was using a Standell with two 15s in it. We're talking back to, I mean, Jack Bruce used a Standell in the Cream. That's where I first saw it. So I had to have a Standell.
Wow.
So then on to the acoustic 360.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's where I first saw the name and all of that. And I'm not sure if he used it all the time, because I remember Orange and Custom and all of those big puffy rolled leather or rolled pleather amps were popular. But and of course the Ampeg SVTs were coming out then too. But I was never a fan of the 8-inch SVTs. I always liked the 12s. Once I moved away from that 360. And the Yamaha deal turned out to be perfect, because they had a quad box with 12s in it and pretty decent head on it, powerful enough with an XLR out to go to front of house. So that was my amp rig for a lot of years, was the Yamaha bass and their amps. But to move to being at home for 3-4 months at a time, you get pickup dates with people, and you can't be hauling around quad boxes that are in road cases and all that kind of stuff. So I moved over to a SWR, which I still play to this day. It's a great little amp. It's got a 10-inch speaker in it, and it's no bigger than that speaker. But somehow they engineered the box to be able to handle a 5-string, and at small gigs, it just sounds $1 million, that little amp. And
wow.
It's never let me down. I've had it for 25 years now, and it's just a workhorse.
SWR is a great company, but man. I mean, they make some good stuff.
Yeah,
they sure do, and a lot of people have copied it since, but I don't think they've kept the warmth that that first little model had. It's I love it, and can't use it on stage, of course, because it just doesn't have the power to be worth anything up there on stage. Which leads me to I haven't played through an amp on a stage since 1999.
Whoa.
I'm direct now through. Forgive me, I don't know the name of the company, but we came across these great DIs that we use across the stage for everybody, keys, guitar, and bass, that are just they're clean.
Since '99.
Since '99. It took a while to get to this DI, but I gave up the amps in '99. And have been going direct ever since. We're on ears now, so you can tell a difference through the floor and through the audience mics as to what's going out front based on what PA we've got for the show. But again, that bottom line thing, that it never gets less than the bottom line. Our ears. If I was in a sterile environment playing in the studio, I would use my in-ears, because the full spectrum of the sound that you get through those is just it's wonderful, and it's a career saver that I don't have to stand next to a ride cymbal through 90 minutes of a rock and roll set and burn out the high end of my ears like we used to do. So, but I'm direct now, so I'm
cool.
out of the amp business altogether.
Wow.
Well, that seems to be
way
the
before
norm.
all the modeling and everything too. It's, and I guess that's not as critical. And I'm not saying this in a bad way at all. It's not as critical to a bass player, I'd assume, than it is for a guitar player, because a lot of what the guitar player is doing is coming from the amps or effects, to some degree. I mean, of course, it's in your hands, but it's everybody's got their own particular sound, and I know bass players too, but I guess maybe it's not as critical. And if the bass is outputting the tone that you want in the first place, I guess it's much easier to be able to go direct.
Plus those in-ears.
Especially that, and the other thing too is there are styles of music that can benefit from, shall I say, toys, that
Sure.
players can plug into and whatever. LRB's music isn't really that kind of music. It never has been. The only thing that got incorporated, again, back in the late 70s with George, when George came along, was a bit of slap from him. For instance, Help Is On Its Way's got that pluck to it, and Happy Anniversary, of course, is a funk groove with a real cool pattern. Those are the only two songs that you really where the bass tone and style went out of what you would call conventional bass sounds. So wah wah pedals and phase and chorus and stuff like that just aren't part of LRB's sound, and to be honest, they wouldn't really fit. I've dabbled in them, but putting a sound processor in front of me when I can barely see it in the first place, you're singing lead, you don't have time to adjust anything. It's really just extra work.
Mm-hmm.
And like you say, the Fender puts out exactly what I want it to, and a lot of what I do is it's up to my hands to change position where I'm plucking or slapping. It's not that I don't have fun doing all that stuff, but to plug in and do it is just one more layer of stuff that I'm really have never been well versed at doing it, and in the wrong hands, those things just start to sound like noise. And so
right,
it's very clean. I've got a tuner in front of me where I can mute myself if I need to change guitars, and other than that, it's straight out of the tuner into a DI, and I let the front of house guy make it sound good for the room.
Look at that.
Wow. It doesn't get any simpler.
No.
Guitar, cable.
Yeah.
Wow. And I know we got to... Go ahead.
I'm the only guy still using a cable because I've never ever found a wireless that I thought was really good at sending that rich of a signal wirelessly. So I'm still tied to a cable. I'm the only guy with that has to keep getting that thing out of my way to get back to the microphone.
I could turn you onto a wireless that would do exactly what you want, but the problem is they're $5,000.
I was going to say, I know there's one out there that's about $5,000, and I'm not sure.
Angus uses it. Angus Young.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and let me tell you, those things they're made by who are they made by? They're made by a military company. It's not even really a musical company. They just make this guitar pack because I guess somebody stumbled upon it, but they're more for military use. And believe me, you're paying the top dollar for these things. And I think, wasn't it Doug Aldridge has one? I think he has one too. It's ridiculous.
There's a couple different ones out there. There's that, and there's another one, but they're both up in the $5K range.
Yeah, it's insane money.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, there are times when having that rope tied to the end of the guitar is more than once I've almost tangled myself up and taken a good dive on stage because of it. But the freedom, and if they're of that high quality, you gotta stretch it out over the course of another 5 years of touring. It's really not that much to look into. I wasn't aware that there was that kind of a high end piece of equipment out there, but I think it's worth a try.
Here's what I'll do. You let me
rehearsal and see.
Yeah, let me look for it. I have to go back through some of my notes, and if I find it, I'll send it over to your PR lady, and she can turn you on to it. Because it wasn't sure. It was some other company, and I can't remember what it was. And maybe if one of our listeners can remember, they could send me an email, and I can make it a little bit faster. Because I'll have to go through about 24 shows to go back to that one. Maybe you know what? I think if I listen to the Doug Aldridge show, it's in there because he talks about it.
Yeah, I think
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Because
worth a try.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, anything to help you out there because cables. I mean, it's so funny. I'm a big fan of the band Airborne, which is like modern day AC/DC. And those guys, they're like, oh yeah, we use wirelesses, and then they're like, but the cable's right here. And when they don't feel right, man, that thing is unplugged and right into the guitar, and they're back to the lead. And it's like, that tether is, although it is a little cumbersome, it's definitely the thing that puts you directly to the amp.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's where the sound is. The other thing, too, is, the FCC got real strict with a whole band of frequencies that we used to live in the 600 range. They took them all for... They moved everybody out of the way so that they could make a huge band for emergency vehicles. And good on them, rightfully so. But they shook us up for a couple of years because it got to the point where they could close the show down because we were, possibly using an illegal frequency because the gear wasn't ready yet to switch over. It is now. That drama's over with. But there were a few months there when we were. Tiptoeing around airports and emergency vehicles.
But there's just one thing I got to do. I got to give a shout out to a good friend of ours who was actually part of LRB from 90 to 99. Mr. Tony Sciutto.
Oh,
Tony.
Very well.
Tony was part of the era of change where. There have been a few people that came and went with Little River Band, and Tony and Peter Beckett started touring with us in 90, and you're right, got all the way through 98 or 99, like you say. Tony's still playing. We still see him once in a while when we get to the Baltimore area. Good friend, great player, great singer. We had a great time on the road. He went around the world with us.
Yeah, I know he did. Yeah. I know he did. So I will tell him you said hi, if I may.
Please do.
Next time I see him.
Please
Very
do.
cool.
How about that?
Very cool. Yeah, there you go.
And look, it all comes back around.
Hometown connection. Hometown connection.
Small world.
And your website is the Little River. Is it the Little River Band or littleriverband.com? I can't remember. I was just looking at it.
It's just littleriverband.com.
Okay. So that, with all of your social media, will live in the description of the show at ampsandaxiscast.com in
perpetuity.
That's right. And then when it goes over to the archives, definitely check it out. Check all of Wayne's stuff out over there because, that's what we do, man. We just spread the love, and we rely on our listeners to do that for the guys that we interview.
That's right. And when this is up, Wayne, Mick will let you know, and you can share the love with all your fans as well.
Yeah, man.
That'll be great. I know we probably went long, but
no.
You get me talking about all of that history, and I get to be my jaw starts flapping. So head it away.
It's all good, and thanks for hanging in there with the technical difficulties with us.
Man.
No worries. It was great talking to both of you. Thank you for the chat today. It's great.
Oh, thank you.
Likewise, Wayne. Safe travels, much continued success, and Merry Christmas.
Yeah, man.
Same to you guys. Have a
Thank
great
you very
Christmas.
much. All right, take care. You too.
Be safe. Take care.
And there you have the story.
How about that? What a nice guy, man.
Yeah, totally nice guy.
And you could tell. I mean, we could have that conversation could go on for 3 hours. I know it. He's got stories. He's got and just seen that road and done that whole thing. And I was like, it's one of those ones. It's like, well, we could let this ride, but we have other things we got going on, and you know what? We'll have to have him back on. Yeah,
that could be cool. And we'll find out that we'll have to have him let us know when he gets to the Baltimore area because he'll go see Tony,
and we could do that personal.
That's it. We'll go see Tony with him.
Yeah, hell yeah, man, that'd be great. Bring the amps and axes to him. How about that?
That's right.
I tell you what, I can't imagine whole left-right brain thing going on like that with the bass, but that's why I'm a Neanderthal guitar player. Anyway,
right. As well.
So until next time, my friend.
That's right, because you never know what continent we're going to be bringing you.
That's right. I'm Mick Marcelino.
I'm Jeff Bober.
And we're always saying,
onward.
Be sure and follow the show on Twitter at Amps and Axes. Also, make sure you like the show on Facebook. For news, comments, and everything else, visit the webpage, ampsandaxiscast.com. Thanks for listening.